All rise.
You may be seated. Continuing in the matter of case number 1138, the matter of LucasFilm on trial for the murder of the Star Wars franchise. Mr. Ng, thank you for attending court today. I know you were out last week on personal business.
Actually, film threat business,
but it was also very personal.
Yes, it was personal.
Please, if you would, please read for the court, bringing this document up. These are the documents. And just to remind those members of the jury, if you're watching this live or on a replay, in the description of this video, you can get a link to the charges and read them for yourself. Today, we are discussing count number 8. I will scroll down to count number 8. If you could read count number 8, sir.
Yes. The film threat jury, in the name and on behalf of the citizens of the fandom of Star Wars, charge and accuse Lucasfilm, Disney, with the offense of blatant misuse of the expanded universe. On or about the 30th day of October 2012, Lucasfilm Disney did blatantly misuse the expanded universe, which has been loved by fans for decades, by declaring it non-canon and disregarding its rich history and characters. This decision showed a lack of respect for the fans and their investment in the Star Wars universe.
The correct reading of it is beloved by fans for decades. Accuracy is important, Mr. Ng.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it here. Beloved by fans, which has been beloved by fans. Yeah. For decades, Your Honor, for decades.
Thank you, sir.
And again, I would like to make a motion that you instruct the jury to smash that like button, subscribe to the Film Threat channel, and on both YouTube and Rumble.
We're on Rumble, so there you are. Mr. Ng, I will repeat, please like, share, and subscribe as we continue. And to members of the jury, I would ask, before the prosecution and defense come on, that you keep an open mind based on the proceedings today. This trial will be wrapped up by the end of July. Very quickly, the schedule. Next week, so a little bit of court business here. Next week, because of the 4th of July holiday, we will be on recess on July 5th. July 5th, we will be doing a special Film Threat show about the new Mission Impossible movie, which both Mr. Ng and I have seen. On July 12th, we will wrap up with the argument of count 9. My understanding is prosecutors, Mr. Gary Beekler and Mr. Az from Heel versus Babyface will be on the prosecution for the Wednesday, July 12th. On Wednesday, July 19th, we will have jury deliberations. If you are a member of the Film Threat channel, you will be able to make your arguments and a live jury deliberation, if you will. And the final episode of Critics Court on the evening of July 26th, the final episode of Critics Court, in which we will render verdicts on all counts, and we will be sentencing based on that outcome. In addition, the next trial will be determined by you, the jury, on perhaps which franchise or case we should take next. A little bit of court housekeeping there at the top of the show. It's time that we get started. Court is now in session. Now I would like to bring on Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood is our court sketch artist. Thank you for your perfect attendance record, unlike Mr. Ng. Your perfect attendance record, Mr. Blackwood, and thank you for your illustrations. You can go to blackwoodpdx.com and on Instagram at blackwood_PDX, where you will see visualizations of today's proceedings along with some of those in attendance in court. Mr. Blackwood, do you have anything to show us today before we begin? Other than your Gmail address, which is blackwood096 at gmail.com. Do we have any new illustrations to share with the court? All right. Let's get started. I can't hear. All right, he can't hear anything. All right, well, then there we are. We'll just go from there, Mr. Blackwood. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Now we're bringing on let's bring on today's members of the prosecution team first. Ms. Girl, Ms. That Star Wars Girl, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And also we have a Miss, and congratulations, Anna, on your yes, that's quite a rock.
It
quite
is
a rock there.
pretty.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And if you could just mute Mr. Blackwood, and also joining us, also on the prosecution team. I don't know whether to call you Mr. Cock, Mr. Doomcock. Which would you prefer?
Simply Doomcock will do, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'm going to say Mr. Doomcock. We keep it formal here. Also joining us as members of the defense team, Sam is making his return. Thank you. The Spy Guy. Thank you. And Mr. Bill the Critic, Bill Waters. I know Bill Waters from the convention scene. Thank you, Mr. Bill the. I'll just say Bill the Critic. Bill the Critic. And we also thank you for your attendance today on the defense. I wish everyone here on both the prosecution and the defense good luck in the proceedings today. Additionally, we have a special surprise witness, and this surprise witness may be used for either side, either the prosecution or the defense. You may call Anthony Daniels, C-3PO. Welcome to our court today.
It is I, C-3PO, human-cyborg relations. You probably do not recognize me because of the red arm.
Yes, the beloved red arm from The Force Awakens. It's all a mystery. Okay. To begin today's proceedings and how things will go today, the prosecution will present their case. When the prosecution rests, they may be cross-examined by the defense, and we will then have a short recess, a short break. The defense will then present their case along with a cross-examination by the prosecution, and then we will end today's court session with open debate. Who would like to go first on behalf of the prosecution?
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Doomcock. Doomcock. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. If you would present, please, my shared screen. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, distinguished panel, members of the jury, if it please the court, I must state before we begin, the Doomcock is not a lawyer by profession. I am merely a simple country supervillain, hell-bent on world conquest, and your legal ways confuse me like a caveman thawed from a block of ice on an episode of Perry Mason written by Rod Serling after smoking the wrong kind of wacky tobacco in his favorite cigarettes. So I ask the court's leniency in any violations of procedure, rules of evidence, and other norms of jurisprudence I may violate in the course of these proceedings as I assist my distinguished fellow prosecutor today in mounting a case against the Walt Disney Company for its crimes against that galaxy far, far away, which we will heretofore refer to jointly and separately as Star Wars. The charges laid out for today's segment of the trial is blatant misuse of the Star Wars extended universe, which we'll heretofore refer to jointly and separately as the EU. Your Honor, I would submit to you that the crime that should be charged today is not misuse of the EU. Rather, Disney should be standing trial for the murder of the EU in the first degree. While specific examples of blatant misuse regarding the EU will certainly emerge in the course of these proceedings, and my distinguished fellow prosecutor and I will prove, beyond reasonable doubt, Disney's guilt in meticulously and relentlessly destroying all aspects of Star Wars, including but not limited to the EU. Disney's crimes in regard to the EU are not limited to mere abuse. I would like to establish from the very start of these proceedings that Kathleen Kennedy, the president of LucasFilm, ordered, sanctioned, and with malice of forethought, did an aid and abet with her handpicked team execute the EU with the equivalent of Order 66. According to Tom'sGuide.com, after Disney purchased the Star Wars license in 2012, it was only a matter of time until the company decided to nix the expanded universe. On April 25th, 2014, the Disney-fied Lucasfilm staff wrote a blog post explaining that the EU would be decanonized and printed under a Legends banner from now on. The message was clear. With new films on the way, Disney couldn't have nearly 40 years of semi-official existing material cluttering up the mythos. And I get that, says the author, who doesn't? You can't invite filmmakers onto an exciting new Star Wars project and tell them, by the way, this had better not step on the toes of any of your thousands of existing stories. No, if we wanted new films, the EU had to go. Tellingly, that's the excuse. If we want new films, the EU has to go. Oddly enough, it's as Kylo Ren said in The Last Jedi, the most loathed Star Wars story ever told, let the past die. Kill it if you have to. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, at this time I must pose the question, how does one murder a dream? Dreams are not living things, no more alive than the fictional heroes that populate them in comic books, novels, songs, and the tales passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter in more primitive tribes through their oral traditions down through the ages. So how then does one murder a story when stories have no beating heart to stab, no throat to cut? In short, how does one kill an idea? We could ask Kathleen Kennedy, had the court been able to serve her a subpoena to be here, but of course no process server would be able to survive service behind Disney's magic curtain, although I am told that many Bothan process servers died trying to subpoena her appearance here today. So in absence of Ms. Kennedy, we can instead turn to George Orwell for his testimony. Mr. Orwell laid the blueprint for Kennedy's brand of historical revision and destruction in his novel 1984, in which a ministry of truth was devoted to finding materials from the past that contradicted the government's propaganda efforts. The protagonist of the novel, one Winston Smith, was employed by the Ministry of Truth to sort, shred, and burn the books, documents, and recordings of the past containing ideas the officials deemed dangerous to their totalitarian regime or that contradicted the kinds of historical lies the government was seeking to establish as historical truth. For example, let's say that a fascist government seized control of the United States, and the new fascist government wanted to change the history of the United States to prove to future generations that the United States always was a totalitarian regime. Well, in that scenario, a Ministry of Truth would wish to burn all history books, all American flags, any old copies of the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, and any recordings of the Star-Spangled Banner. Now, the current citizens would, of course, remember the truth about how the United States used to be, but absent any actual historical documentation, any proof of the United States existing as a beacon of freedom, that knowledge would die out with the current generation. No one born after the regime change would ever know the truth of what the United States was about, and the same is true for the Star Wars EU. Your Honor, members of the jury, it is my contention that the ultimate misuse of an entity is the murder of that entity. It is my contention that Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, and her accomplices and accessories after the fact murdered the EU for exactly the purposes outlined by Mr. Orwell in 1984 to facilitate the regime change from George Lucas to Mickey Mouse, to ensure that the only Star Wars that would be remembered is Disney's Star Wars, to eliminate the inevitably unfavorable comparisons between the wondrous, dynamic, adventurous eruption of sheer joy represented by George Lucas's Star Wars and the joyless, agenda-driven, feminist-obsessed, and terminally woke cultural vandalism represented by Disney's Star Wars. Now, I can almost hear the defense thinking to themselves as they listen to this, isn't Doomcock being a bit bombastic? Isn't Doomcock being dramatic? Isn't the idea of the EU being murdered an overstatement? Surely, no matter what Disney does or Kennedy decrees, the old books and comics are still floating around out there, yes? They still live so long as printed copies of EU materials exist. Isn't that so? I would argue that the books and comics that make up the EU are, at their base, forms of communication. Can there be said to be communication without at least two parties? If a book is printed in a language no one can read anymore, it is effectively dead. Its ideas silenced, its meaning forgotten. The same can be said for books that are forgotten, that are cut off from the general population, or worse, overwritten by revisionists to fit their new agendas, their new histories, their new franchises. Again, I would like to introduce into evidence a few key quotes from Mr. Orwell that illustrate why this misuse of the EU should be taken so seriously. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street and building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. History has stopped. I shudder. I shudder at this. History has stopped in 1984. Certainly, the EU has stopped, hasn't it? Perhaps in a Fahrenheit 451 scenario in the future, small pockets of fans will remember the EU, share digital files of old comics and novels, but it's a struggle against the forgetfulness of time. Every year, more and more people who remember the Dark Horse Star Wars comics will pass, and their relevance will slide until eventually they'll be forgotten. Reconfigured by Disney, which in this case functions like the Genesis device from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, destroying pre-existing life in favor of its new Matrix. And again, I cite Mr. Orwell when it comes to Disney's motive for decanonizing and banishing the EU. Why would they do this? As Orwell states, who controls the past, controls the future, who controls the present, controls the past. I fear some hypothetical day when Disney decides to remake the original Star Wars trilogy, making Leia the hero who blows up the Death Star, and then Disney locks away the original film in a vault, treating it as if it never existed, and who knows, perhaps in 100 years, no one will remember it exists. The same goes for the EU. Mickey Mouse is reshaping these beloved stories in their own woke image. They have the power to control the future of Star Wars, but to consolidate that power, they are seizing control of Star Wars past. Again, consider the testimony of Mr. Orwell. The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. I would also posit, and we will hear concrete examples of this next point from my learned colleague for the prosecution, The Disney's motive for killing off the EU was also, in more practical terms, one of the oldest motives in the world: simple theft. Kennedy famously asserted, with crocodile tears and lupine cunning, that the great problem with Star Wars was there was so little source material to draw stories from. No source material for Star Wars. What a spurious assertion. Kennedy decanonizes the EU and then complains there isn't enough source material? That's like Lizzie Borden chopping up her parents and then complaining that she's an orphan. This is no accident, as we will prove today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Because if the EU ceases to exist, then LucasFilm is free to pick and choose what stories they want to rip off from the rubble. 2 instances submitted for your approval: Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi, 2 series that aired to the dismay of Star Wars fans everywhere on Disney+. 2 series that absolutely destroyed EU characters and canon, squandered them, bent, pulled, spindled, and mutilated them. Take, for example, the shameful and embarrassing misuse of the classic EU character Black Santan, a Wookiee bounty hunter from the EU. He was an impressive figure and a worthy addition to the Star Wars universe. Now, after decanonizing the EU, Disney at the very least could have just left the EU characters alone. But this speaks to motive, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. They don't leave these classic EU characters be, oh no. They bring them back and then abuse them. See how they ruined Black Santan in Book of Boba Fett, a fantastic EU character much loved by fans, reduced to such a low level that he couldn't even take out an old, fat, unarmed Boba Fett in a back-to-tank Speedo. This was insulting and absurd abuse of a formidable EU character, and an abuse of George Lucas's canon specifically. In the original Star Wars, Han Solo tells C-3PO it isn't wise to upset a Wookiee, because Wookiee can pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. C-3PO wisely counsels, let the Wookiee win, and yet Black Santan, who is most certainly even a more formidable fighter than Chewbacca, can't even defeat a naked old unarmed plump guy in a Speedo. So while ruining EU characters like Black Santan, Disney is also ruining the original trilogy canon, which is no surprise because the EU and the original films are all intertwined, which magnifies the damage to Star Wars caused by this misuse. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney+, by its mere existence, erased or tainted virtually everything we knew about the past of Obi-Wan, erased pretty much everything he had ever done in the EU, perverted his relationship and commitment to Luke Skywalker on a fundamental level, elevated Leia to his most favoriteest kiddo ever, made Leia as important to the Jedi as Luke, had Obi-Wan abandon his charge to guard Luke, to run off and save Leia, screwed up tons of continuity for Vader throughout the Star Wars and the EU, and even mangled the Empire Strikes Back retroactively. When Luke flies off to confront Vader, Obi-Wan says, that boy is a lost hope. And Yoda says, no, there is another. Well, if this atrocious Obi-Wan Kenobi series was indeed canon, if it had actually happened, Obi-Wan would know that Leia had the Force too. He spent a whole series shoving Luke to the side in order to protect Leia after all. It destroys the canon of the original Star Wars since Leia makes it clear throughout the movie that she didn't know Obi-Wan personally, not in the way she records a message for him in R2-D2, nor does she weep for him when Vader kills Obi-Wan on the Death Star. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in decanonizing all these tales and abusing both EU and original canon characters, Disney is indeed following Kylo Ren's recommendation. Let the past die. Kill it if you must. Disney is indeed killing it, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and it is deliberate murder in the first degree. Now, far be it from me to charge Disney with crimes they have yet to commit, but I find it speaks to motive, Your Honor, and supports the case for misuse of the EU that Kennedy is poised to make heir to the empire with Dave Filoni. Zahn's Thrawn trilogy no longer exists officially, but true to form, it appears that Disney is going to give heir to the empire the Book of Boba Fett treatment. And then, moving forward, Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy will be classified as fan fiction, forgotten and discarded. And Disney's Thrawn trilogy will be the only Thrawn trilogy anyone remembers as time goes by. Why is this pernicious? It alters the very foundation of Star Wars. Thrawn's trilogy is widely regarded by fans as the proper sequel trilogy, and only one, the only one that we will ever get. And as such, it is truly integrated into the very fabric of Star Wars. And yet, with this Dave Filoni revision, we see Disney implementing their invasion of the franchise snatchers plan to replace Star Wars with a Disney-fied simulacrum, setting out Zahn's books and laying an alien pod next to them, which will reduce them to a lifeless husk and take their place come morning. And once that happens, if anyone ever asks, hey, wasn't Luke the one who faced down Master Seaboth? Kids will scratch their heads and say, no, wasn't that Ezra and Ahsoka that did that? What, Thrawn was blue? I thought Thrawn was a proud woman of rainbow color. And so it goes. The memory of the EU down the sinkhole of history, shredded by Mickey Mouse and his minions, leaving only the smoking remains of Star Wars in its wake. In summary, in decanonizing the EU, the Walt Disney Company, along with Kathleen Kennedy and those under her authority, is guilty of the ultimate misuse of the EU, the murder of the extended universe. During this trial, you will hear specific instances of this misuse from the prosecution, but regardless of any of these specific instances, that decanonization was the ultimate misuse of the EU, of the fans, of George Lucas, and of Star Wars itself. And that mere decanonization, I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is enough to warrant a guilty verdict in this case. I would conclude with one final quote from Mr. Orwell. The past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became the truth. I present this to the court in the hope that your honor will consider my words when the guilty verdict comes in, as it surely will, and it's time to pronounce sentence. I understand we cannot at this late date change this to a murder trial, but I respectfully urge your honor to pass the harshest possible sentence in regard to these charges, for the magnitude of Disney's crimes are, in my view, not adequately addressed by the charges laid out here today. This is not a misuse, I would submit. This is an execution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doomcock. Thank you for your presentation. The jury is clearly awake. I see a lot of chatter amongst the jury members, and thank you for your attendance here today. Thank you, Mr. Doomcock, for your presentation. We're brief on time. Ms. Anna, do you have anything to add to Mr. Doomcock's presentation?
Yes, I do. But first, may you please read the charges again for me?
Yes. I closed that window. Give me a moment here. I will find them.
While you grab that, I'll just start by saying, I realized after last time, a lot of you thought I was a little too aggressive. I apologize for that. I thought we were all adults. I'm more than happy to speak like we're in a kindergarten class, so that's what I'll be doing today. I also got the memo that you didn't like that many slides, so I only have 3 of them for you today, and the rest is going to be show and tell. But while we wait for Chris, can you share my screen, please?
Absolutely.
All right, so if we go back to 2019, that was right after Solo, a Star Wars disaster came out, and this was when Bob Iger said that there was just too much Star Wars at one time and Star Wars fatigue. Then we had Kathleen Kennedy in the same year, a few months later, come out and say every one of these movies in regards to Marvel, right? Because if you guys go back to the first episode when I went over Bob Iger and them purchasing Star Wars from George Lucas and all of Lucasfilm. They also acquired Marvel. I explained that with the Pixar deal, and then with Marvel, and then with Star Wars. And so this is what Kathleen Kennedy is referencing. Every one of these movies, Marvel, is particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. Kathleen Kennedy, Rolling Stone, 2019. And then you have the funny meme underneath it. Now I will elaborate on that in a moment. But guys, also I did want to point out before I stopped the slideshow, George Lucas even used the EU when he was writing the prequels. So a lot of people like to give George Lucas, a lot of heat on some of the stuff that he did, which, everyone is open for criticism. But at least in this aspect, George Lucas respected stories that other people wrote with his IP because they also respected the universe that he created. Now, to end the slideshow, and can you please make me full screen?
Of course.
All right, so Kathleen Kennedy, there's no comic books, right? There's absolutely no source material of any kind, and this goes along with what Doomcock was saying about how there is, soon all of this is going to be gone. But they don't have any of this, right? Speaking of 800-page novels, they don't have any of this, right? There's nothing. This doesn't exist. Whereas when you had Marvel, you had someone like Kevin Feige who had an entire Bible of all of these Marvel characters, stories that they had done. And they had this little thing, which is crucial, a plan. They didn't go and erase all of the Marvel characters to create new ones. They utilized the things that they had. So recently, Disney has, been going and kind of just destroying past characters instead of going over, I don't know, maybe stories that already existed. Now, I do have a lot of books to show you. I did say that this is show and tell. These are only a fraction of the ones I could find. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of stuff to go through. But so as far as the expanded universe goes, what they are doing now after they notice the Star Wars fatigue as for what they are doing, which is blatantly just destroying characters, showing no respect to them or anything that came before them, and now they are bleeding money. So what are they doing? They're like, oh, here are all these books and things that we kind of threw away. Let's go and just get the Spark Notes, the very bad Spark Notes version of them, and let's make the 99-cent store knockoff versions of them. So if you go to the Kenobi show, I believe it is the Kenobi, no, it's the Andor show. There's a character named Lucan, the Skarsgård guy plays him. I can't remember his name. So that is actually a knockoff of a fantastic character, one of my favorite characters in the expanded universe, Talon Card. Talon Card is in the Thrawn novels that Timothy Zahn wrote. Here we have Grand Admiral Thrawn. He has this little creature on his shoulder called an Islamari. An Islamari is a creature that creates bubbles in the Force, so Jedis can't use their powers in the presence of an Islamari. That was part of Thrawn's grand plan. Now they're throwing away, this character, they're butchering this character, and they're just changing everything to, go like what Doomcock was saying with Ahsoka. They're changing all of these things. Now, there is a clip out there, I believe you can find it, where Dave Filoni is talking, and Katie Lucas, George Lucas's daughter, who was also in Star Wars, and she wrote some of the best episodes of the Clone Wars ever. She was talking about how they referenced the EU, and Dave Filoni did not want to give these EU creators credit. And the reason that is because they don't want to pay people like Timothy Zahn, like the creator of, this character called Revan, fantastic character, most beloved character, this character called Bane. Remember, none of these characters exist. Characters like Mara Jade, none of those characters exist because they don't want to pay them. So this was the first EU book ever created. This is A Splinter of the Mind's Eye. This brings in the Kyber crystals. And unfortunately, I am blanking on, there we go, Alan Dean. I was like, it's something with an A. I knew that. So Alan actually went on, I believe it's Orville Nation's channel, and he did a live stream explaining how Disney stopped paying him royalties for not only this book, but other books that he wrote. And that is what Disney is doing with a majority of the people in the EU. If you guys go and look, Chris Avallone wrote KOTOR 2. He wrote the video game. That has one of the most iconic characters ever, which is Darth Kreia. And Kreia, everybody that I know that's a Star Wars fan that has played those games absolutely adores Kreia. Well, guess what? They don't want to use those characters because they don't want to pay the people that created them. And when you talk to people that worked on these books, and like people like Timothy Zahn, who is still alive, who is still working, who is still going to cons and talking to fans. Well, guess what? He is getting gypped on Thrawn because they don't want to pay him royalties. So what they are doing with Kathleen Kennedy lying about not having novels, not having comics, is that they want to erase them and take things. Remember that 10% rule that they do a lot with Star Trek? Oh, well, we're going to take somebody else's creation and we're going to change it a little bit so that way we can do it our way, not give this other person that actually created it credit, and they don't have to pay them. And right now, I believe I saw a projection online about all of the most recent Disney movies that they have released, and they have lost, what was it, over $850 billion? That's a lot of money. Actually, I might be a little high on there. Maybe it's 850 million. That sounds about right. Sorry, I'm not a math person, as you guys can see. But I know what is this? What are you guys saying in the private chat? Am I missing something? Did I run out of time yet? Do you want me to
you're fine. Continue, but we'll have to wrap up for cross-examination.
Okay, no problem. All right, the last point that I will make after, showing you guys all of the novels, all of these trilogies that they don't have source material for that. One of the things that Disney, and one of the reasons why George Lucas became a billionaire, was the toy sales, right? And Disney likes making toys, or at least they used to, and they wanted to acquire that. They bought the merchandising rights from George Lucas, so that way they can have it, so that way they can make money off of your children and every adult that wants to purchase stuff from Disney. Well, when George Lucas still owned Star Wars, and for anyone that wants to dismiss the EU and say that it wasn't important, so George Lucas came out with this line. So this was a collaboration with Hasbro. So this was the comic book 2-pack, and this was a way for kids to not only get into reading, but also you get 2 characters. So these are actually some of the rarest action figures you can find. They also go for very, very expensive on eBay. The characters that I showed you a moment ago with Talon Card and Thrawn, these were actually from a comic book 2-pack, and it cost $80 a pop just for these 2 opened action figures. This one was a lot more expensive, and they go even higher. Whereas Disney, with their characters like Rose Tico, you can't even give them away for 5 cents. Nobody wants them. But this was a fantastic way for kids like me when I was little to get into reading comics, and you get action figures with it. But Disney doesn't care about this. They said the EU wasn't important. Nobody cares about the EU, yet when you have stuff like this, is some of the hardest and most valuable Star Wars merchandise out there to find, that is still some of the most valuable considering the price point of it. They just want to throw that out the door because they would rather take the hit and not pay the people that created this and not give George Lucas credit for any of it, as compared to actually giving the fans what they want, which is what Marvel did. And with that, I will pass it off to Alan.
We're short on time, Mr. Ring.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you. I do have a quick... Sorry?
Prosecution rep, Your Honor.
The prosecution... A quick... Ms. Girl, Anna, can you answer for me, who is Dash Rendar?
He's a character. Did you like that answer?
It's a Star Wars character. Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to know that you know who Dash Rendar is. The prosecution is.
Wait, Chris, I have a question for you. Then, do you know who this is?
Is that Darth Bane?
No.
I can't. Darth Revan. It's one of. Yeah, I don't.
This is Revan. This is Bane. Do you know who this is?
I do not know who that is.
Okay, I'm going to cover up the name. Do you know who this is? This is a character that they erased.
No, I do not know who that is.
This is Jaina Solo, a character that they that they destroyed, so that way we could have Kylo Ren. Isn't that fun?
I really care about the movies. I have read the Zahn novels, but the jury is really the ones making the decision here, so I'm going to leave it to the jury. As we're short on time, defense, you may cross-examine the members of the prosecution.
All right, I'll start out with that. I got a real quick question, 2 for Mr. Doomcock. First, you said something that maybe this was relating to George Orwell, sweet voice changer, by the way, got lost in your voice. You said something about that they burnt all the history. Can you still get the EU material nowadays? Is it still available?
Yes, it is.
Okay. See, the reason I asked that is because recently,
Can I answer that question? Disney does actually not sell it. The only places you're able to get it is on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or secondhand dealers. Disney does not sell them.
That is correct. And also, as I stated in my opening, that it is only a matter of time until these materials, through attrition or the fan base dying out, vanish, and then the new narrative will be supreme, as it was in Orwell's book.
Gotcha. I understand. I'm going to try and keep it brief because my other guys have a couple questions also. So now on to you, Mr. Doomcock. Just to be 100% clear, do you believe that the EU is better? We're talking about after the movies. The EU is better than what Disney gave us, yes or no? And then same question for you, Anna. I just want to be very clear.
Yes.
Okay. Miss Girl? Same question, exact same question. Do you believe that the EU is better than what Disney gave us?
Better in what way?
Just better. Like, I mean, I don't know. Better as in...
Well, are you saying as far as novelizations, are they better? Obviously, they're not going to be cinematically better because movies of them do not exist.
Right. Sorry. The storyline, the overarching, the story, because obviously the EU didn't get movies. It's not a gotcha. I just want to know, do you think that Disney did a better job after...
In my personal opinion?
Yes.
Yes,
Obviously.
I do.
Okay.
Can I ask what the relevance of that question is?
It'll be in my presentation. That's not the time for this, but we'll get to it, I promise, and you can ask me.
Well,
Those are my three questions.
When you're in court,
I
you
would
can't
add that
ask
certain
without
progressive
relevance.
commercials are better than the Disney-fied Star Wars.
Okay. Awesome. I was just wanting to know where you guys stood, so now I won't...
I hate progressive commercials.
Awesome. I won't waste any more my guys' time. The rest of the defense?
Okay, first I kick off. Miss Girl, you brought up the point about the Disney is no longer, or is not publishing any of the EU novels at this time, correct?
I'm not aware of all of Disney's publishing deals, but as far as me going and purchasing things, I cannot find it at any online Disney store or any of the places that Disney sells.
And the novelizations and comics prior to the Disney acquisition, did LucasArts, Lucasfilm, or any of those direct imprints publish their own novels, or did they go through secondary publishers?
So when you have companies like Lucasfilm or LucasArts, they license off merchandise. Like in my presentation, I explained George Lucas had the collaboration with Hasbro. And so that's why a lot of you can get the Kenner Star Wars action figures. You can get the Hasbro versions. I prefer the Hasbro versions because they have more articulation, especially these ones. But as far as novels, a lot of them go through Penguin. And so the way that businesses work is that when you have an IP like Star Wars, it's kind of like they rent it from you. That's why you see companies like Lego. When you go into Lego's prices have skyrocketed because they're paying for all of these licensing fees. And that's why you can go into a Lego store and find any IP there. You can go find Ninjago, which is their own thing. You can go and find Marvel. You can go and find Friends, the TV show. So that's the way that works.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with how it works, but that's not really the question that I'd asked. It's, did Lucasfilm publish them before themselves? Or the licensing deals?
Publishing company. They do, when you go to Lucasfilm, you can go and get books from them. I have a few from when I was there. I can try to...
I mean, specifically the EU novelizations or comics.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can do some research and find out if you would like.
All right, thank you. And with regards to where I was getting to is Disney not themselves publishing right now? Actually, just a question: are you aware of Disney refusing to extend licenses to EU titles, either comics or novels?
Yes. So when they started doing the High Republic and they canceled other novels from them, so they are only allowing people in-house to write novels, whereas Lucas, it was licensed off.
All right, thank you, Mr. Let's see, Doomcock. Actually, was I apologize. Yeah, you brought up the note about in episode 4 when Obi-Wan was killed. There was no implication that Leia knew him at that time. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. None whatsoever.
However, did not, when they're breaking her out of the cell, did she not reply going, Ben Kenobi is here? Where is he? She immediately recognized that name in the cell. Did she not?
Yes, she recognizes the name. However, she does not have any kind of emotional connection, which she would have had having this grand adventure in Disney Star Wars. She goes, General Kenobi, years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Not, General Kenobi, years ago, you saved my ass when I was a moron and ran away. And you abandoned Luke and all that stuff. She's very formal and knows of him in reputation, not personally. And nor does she weep when he dies or evince any kind of emotion whatsoever.
But there's neither is there any. Are you aware of everything that Leia did on the Falcon after he died?
Well, I didn't see her take a shit. I didn't see her go ahead and wash under her pits. I didn't see her eat. There's lots of things that you could say about that. However, all I can do is the record, the official record, which is the film. And besides, when we do know when she finds that he first dies, and she just comforts Luke, who's torn up, predictably because, well, he knew Obi-Wan Kenobi. She did not.
Well, since you were clearly expecting that someone that's grown up on Alderaan and through the politics, both of the Imperial Senate as well as just on our homeworld as well, would not be able to more resiliently withstand that emotional impact than Luke did.
Well, she should at least blink.
Fair enough. And you said the most low story, Star Wars story was it Last Jedi?
I think that's very safe to say that The Last Jedi, indeed. Well, I don't think it's a Star Wars story at all. It's Jake Soywoker, but not really Luke Skywalker. But yeah, they slapped the Star Wars label on it, and it sundered in twain the fan base, and it's been in decline ever since.
But does not Current still hold both a lower audience score and critic score?
Does it now what?
Does not Caravan of Courage actually hold a lower score, both from audiences as well as critics?
Caravan of Courage.
Yes. Ewok Adventure.
That's a Star Wars movie?
It is.
Not theatrically released.
It was internationally.
And I think there's a difference between indifference and actual active hatred. I had never even heard of this thing. So it's not really particularly loathed. I think it's some discarded.
Actually, but you said, and you also said story, not movies. So that's a different sort of situation as well. So actually, and as far as the statement by Kathleen Kennedy about we don't have any 800-page novels, that stands as being true. The longest book is only 624 pages, not 800. We'll rest at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Thank you, members of the defense. We're going to take briefly. We will go over some.
Sorry, Your Honor. I had a question.
Yes.
It's just one question.
What's the question?
Why do we want Chewbacca to be dead? If we accept the expanded universe, Chewbacca is dead. We can't bring him back for the movies.
Everybody dies.
I know. But that's the thing.
Did he die a punk ass death like Cad Bane, or did he have a good noble death?
There's an incident with a moon. That's all you really need to know.
Right. And I'll be getting into that for when.
And I would just like to make this statement: we never said all of the EU was good.
Oh no! Yeah, that's my problem.
But you know what? Even the worst EU is better than Disney Star Wars. I will say.
I stand with that statement.
I disagree 100%. Go back and read The Crystal Star and try and tell me.
I have.
Okay, because we're short on time.
For 300 pages.
Excuse me, because we're short on time.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave it there. We're gonna go to some quick comments from the jury. Very quick here. J Bomba fan, the above average savage for 2. Lord Doomcock and Anna, this will be a bloodbath. Nazaro sends in 599 euros. Thank you for that. Big Joe for 1999. Judge Gore, can we all agree that Disney is indeed guilty of using a freaking IKEA chair, which is at least punishable by public shaming by the fan base? I'll say this. When it comes to IKEA chairs, talk to my colleague, Mr. Ng. He had a run-in with a chair last week. It's all over the internet, and that's all I'll say. But thank you, Mr. Big Joe. Nathan Rodriguez for 10. I agree with Doomcock. The expanded universe has awesome characters from Force Unleashed, Knights of the Old Republic, and the Dark Horse comics. What Disney Star Wars has, High Republic, The Rock Disney is 100% guilty. Kathleen Kennedy too. Plus, Doomcock rules.
Thank you, Nathan.
Mark Bagnoli for 199. Apathy is death. We're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there. We're going to take a brief recess, folks. Oh, wait, unless, here, we have one last one that came in. Fletcher Williams, I Suck at Games channel for 199. Unless someone beat me to it, hashtag Doomcock was right. Well.
Thank you, Fletcher.
Having seen the new Indiana Jones, I can just say, Mr. Doomcock, you may have a lot to celebrate after the release of that film tomorrow. We're going to have a brief recess, folks. Grab yourself a beverage, use the facilities. The defense will be first up to present their case, cross-examination, and we will end with open debate. Members of the jury, again, I'll remind you to please keep an open mind.
I suggest a new strategy, Judge Gore. Let the Doomcock win.
I like this android. He's cool.
Thank you for that, Mr. 3PO. All right. Brief break, and we will return.
What I was trying to do is stay independent so I could make the movies I wanted to make. But at the same time, I was sort of fighting the corporate system, which I didn't like. And I'm not happy with the fact that corporations have taken over the film industry. But now I found myself being the head of a corporation. So there's a certain irony there, is that I have become the very thing that I was trying to avoid, which is basically what part of Star Wars is about. That is Darth Vader. He becomes the very thing that he's trying to protect himself against.
It was a quiet Wednesday, that May 25. Quiet, that is. Until Star Wars exploded onto the silver screen and changed the course of movie making forever. We all know that story. But fast forward 35 years, when a real empire consumed it, changed it, broke it, woke it. The magic is gone. The myth is gone.
911 operator, what's your emergency? Oh my god! They killed Star Wars!
The new
Luke Skywalker, the young hero of Star Wars, as he evolved from script to storyboard to actor in the person of 25-year-old Mark Hamill, Luke became a projection of every young boy's adventurous spirit.
The best thing about this whole film has been the kids, because they think they know me now. And since my character in the film appeals to them, they feel very safe with me. They feel like, well, I could do that.
Thank you. I see you've all returned. Continuing in the proceedings, Star Wars on Trial. We are, as a reminder, today we are discussing Count 8. It is now time for the defense to present their case. Who will be taking lead on the defense here? And as a reminder, we are short on time. Who's going first?
I will, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, I was going to say Bill has a time conflict.
Oh, I didn't see that. Bill, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be super quick. Like I said, give me 10 minutes, and if I go over, I'll stop talking. It's not that important. So, discussing count 8. So let me just kind of read this for you and kind of cut out a lot of the legalese here. It is blatant misuse of the expanded universe because it's been beloved by fans by declaring it non-canon and disregarding its rich history and characters. Okay, this count is that Disney disrespected the fans. This is a trial of murder of Star Wars. This is saying that if Disney did not do what they are accused of, meaning disrespect the fans by making the EU non-canon, the Star Wars brand would have been better for it. Keep that in mind. The EU is great. We all love it, right? Like that Star Wars Guild said, not all of it, but there are parts of it that are very near and dear to us. Are there bad parts? Sure, we can concede to that. So it's fair to say that the EU is the Star Wars fans, like it's their baby, right? It's like their child. And if you have any argument about that, try to talk to an EU fan. They will treat it like a child. They love it very much. So with that, let's go ahead and share my screen here. Share screen. Where's that? There we go. Share. All right. So count 8, and I'm gonna break this down as simply as I can because I am a simple man. All right. There it is. Okay. So count 1. This is a murder trial, right? So we got the fans. Oh my gosh, you shot him. Disney, Star Wars. Obviously, count 1 is not shooting him, but I'm just kind of getting the picture out here. The idea, right? Move on. Count 2. Oh my gosh, you stabbed him. Okay. Counts 3 through 7. OMG, you chopped him, you burned him, you stuck him, you RPG'd him, you DDoSed him. Like, okay, this is all contributing to murder. This is count 8 for you, okay? Oh my gosh, you did not touch his butt. This is what you are saying here with the count, right? That you didn't destroy the EU, okay? Because if we know anything about Disney, Disney cannot adapt anything, all right? They were given Marvel, and let's look at the Marvel adaptations recently. It's been dog crap, okay? We all know this. Look at Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, awful. Thor: Love and Thunder, horrible. She-Hulk, they made Doomcock the bad guy. Like, that is not in, like, one, that was super cool, but 2, it's not in the comic books. How can they adapt that? They were given that, and they have turned the trend from up with the MCU, right? Because everyone loved it, everyone was on board, and now it is spiraling down. The only movie that made money recently was Guardians 3, and that was because it was a James Gunn holdover. Marvel's not doing good in Disney's hands, okay? They can't even adapt their own source material, right? Pinocchio, Mulan, Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid was so bad. Alan Ng said it was bad. Do you realize how bad that is? Alan liked Elemental. Do we understand that? Like, they cannot adapt anything. They are horrible. So why would we hand over the EU to Disney? Why would we say, hey, adapt this? Go ahead and destroy everything, right? Why would we do that? That makes no sense. All right, and this is coming at it from a fan, right? Like, I watch this, I love this, I understand, I agree. But this charge, and I understand that the charge is also written by film critics, not lawyers, and so yada, yada, yada. But we cannot fully expect that the EU would be adapted correctly because we know what Disney is. You might have you have a better argument arguing that somebody else should have bought LucasFilm, okay? Because you cannot argue that, oh, well, Disney would have adapted it correctly if they just would have used it. Bull. That is a lie. 100% lie. So the idea that saying, oh, they misused the EU, not true at all. To kind of, in my head, like where I have on this argument, for any of this count to actually hold water, you'd have to prove that, 1, Disney would have adapted the EU faithfully, which they couldn't even do, to their own source material, their own Disney classics. They could not do that. And 2, Disney would have not destroyed the EU from the inside like they did with Marvel, okay? The EU is safe from Disney and its non-canon vault. Sure, do they pick and pull characters? Yes, they do. But the EU is safe, it is sound, because it is not being ruined, all right? I can't personally watch the first 6 Star Wars movies without looking at the Skywalkers and being like, all this ends with freaking Luke Skywalker drinking green titty milk, and then some bitch taking his last name. Okay? It being locked away in a non-canon vault is the safest place because, as some sources say, Disney might be selling Star Wars. And you know what happens if they sell it? They have a perfect canon that they can go back to, and they can decanonize Disney stuff. This was the best possible outcome for Disney buying Star Wars, is that the EU is safe from being abused by Disney's disease. Okay? Now, this is not supposed to be arguing semantics, so I don't want to do that the whole time. I just want to throw that out there, that what you're arguing is a win for Disney, all right? So now I'm going to go into the arguments actually about the EU, and then we can move on. But I just wanted to kind of lay that out there, that if you guys say, yes, Disney is guilty of this, you're putting faith that Disney would have done a good job. That is incomprehensible. But moving on. The EU was too grimdark. Towards the end, it was getting very dark. Like we said, Chewie was dead. Disney is a girl brand, all right? First and foremost, they don't have that. That's not them. So yeah, they were obviously going to reset it because look at it. Like Disney is not going to produce Warhammer, all right? They're going to produce girly Disney Star Wars, and that's what they did. Moving on. It being non-canon doesn't mean we still can't enjoy it, all right? Like, my favorite Batman is Batman the Animated Series. My favorite Superman, right? Like, there are so many heroes that I love that they're not canon, but guess what? I still enjoy them. I still love them, right? And this next one, this is like, I would not be here today without this rendition of Batgirl, all right? I just want you to know that thick thighs do, in fact, save lives, okay? All of our favorite stories are still there, guys. The EU is still there. We can still buy it. Maybe Disney's not selling it, but they're still being printed. You can still get new copies. It's all there, all right? This is the best because Disney did not destroy it like they did the OT, like they did. And they're not going to go remake it. They're not going to go through and destroy those characters. Yeah, did they get put on a shelf? Yes, that's good. But what you're arguing here is you brought all your toys to play with a friend, and then the friend said, no, I'm not doing that. You cannot do that. Oh, and so you're like, oh man, I'm really sad. Like if this argument was in 2016, I could agree and we could different discussion. But seeing what the monster Disney is, this makes no sense because now you took your toys back home, you got real sad, and now you're looking over there at them playing in the field, and all they did is they took their toys that they were playing with and lit them on fire. They don't have it anymore. They've destroyed the Star Wars brand. But the EU, it has always been there, and every time I hear anything, they say, hey, if you don't like the new Disney Star Wars, go to the EU. It's safe. It's there. It's good. So I just want to kind of throw that out there that Disney is incapable of doing good. This is the best possible outcome. I'm all good. Crucify Disney. That's great. I love it. That's fine. But why would we offer up the EU as sacrifice? That makes zero sense. And with that, I'll end my presentation and how do I stop sharing? There we go. And pass my time on to the rest of the defense.
Thank you, Mr. Sam. Who from the defense would like to continue the argument?
I think SpyGuy is up next.
Okay, sure. Look, for me, this is something that comes from my brother's generation. This is a Marvel Star Wars comic book. All these, for those who came out in the 1970s, before VCRs became a common thing, the only way they were able to get new adventures of Star Wars was via these comic books and the novel adaptations. In the end, Lucas had to put all these things away because when they were publishing these things during the movies, the original trilogy, and they would become contradictory to the other books and supplements. What happened after Empire Strikes or Return of the Jedi, and when the new Timothy Zahn novels came out, they decanonized all this. This was no longer available for anyone as official lore. And frankly, they had to, because we have things like in the Return of the Jedi novelization. Who is Obi-Wan? Did you know that Owen Lars is Obi-Wan Kenobi's brother? George Lucas constantly was changing his minds. At one time, the sister is not Leia. He just wanted to end Return of the Jedi on that note. His original plan is to go out for 3 or 4 movies, introducing a whole new sister character for Luke. And I've seen some of the deleted footage from Return of the Jedi where Luke and Leia are making out on the in a sandstorm waiting to get on a Millennium Falcon. So all these people would come up to me and say, there's this great plan. He was constantly changing that during the writing process. And in the end, the problem with the Disney took over, and there's a lot. Okay, Anna was showing up all her stuff. I have like tons of books on Star Wars and the expanded universe. I have like thousands of dollars I bought over the years, and the novels, and not all of them are that very good. And the idea that we're supposed to have to take them all in is ridiculous. Disney made the smart decision. They put the expanded universe away and called it Legends, just like George Lucas did. That's why they had to do it, because it's a giant contradictory mess of hundreds of books, TV shows, cartoons. Do we think droids should be in canon? I keep seeing, like, even the prosecution admits we shouldn't be having all this stuff in here. We just want to take the stuff that we think is good, like the Zahn trilogy, and we're going to have to, but we can't. Either maybe Disney should have gone and picked and choose to say this was this and this is this, but they would have pissed off everyone anyways. And the prosecutor, Doomcock's argument that the fan base was sundered by the new trilogy, dude, I was there for the prequel launches. They made a movie before YouTube about the trial of George Lucas, where the fans put George Lucas on trial for the prequels and the other things he did. You were talking earlier about the plan there. Well, here's a George Lucas in 1997. What ended up being important in my mind is what the DVD version is going to look like, because that's what everyone is going to remember. The other versions of it will disappear. Even the 35 million tapes of Star Wars out there won't last more than 30 or 40 years. He put away Star Wars in a vault, so we couldn't see it anymore, and he wanted us to have the versions. And you know what? Guess what? We got the old versions back from Disney. They're the ones who gave us back the original trilogy movies untouched as a DVD bonus feature. So all these people who say that they're going to destroy all our stuff, well, there you go. That's my defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spy Guy. Mr. Bill.
All right. Thank you all, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else in between. So basically where we're going to come from is we're going to apply the use of the customary use doctrine, which establishes that when things have been a certain way since time immemorial, someone continuing to use them in a similar way is not in breach. And in this particular case, there's much about the misuse of the EU. However, it has been clearly established by the great granddaddy himself, Mr. George Lucas, that nothing was canon outside of the films and Clone Wars. Period. Hard stop. No exceptions. That was his statements repeatedly for over 2 decades. And there was no changes to those kind of perceptions. Splinter the Mind's Eye, the Zahn novels, everything else that was coming along. And so there was nothing intrinsically new other than Disney simply restating what Lucas had already said, in that we are not beholden to any of this content unless we so deem that we want to. That is the same thing that George said. There's nothing new here. And we're looking about how they've changed characters. We can go back to the very example that was being alluded to by my colleague previously, by Spy Guy, in that, again, there is no available existent versions of Star Wars. It wasn't Episode 4. It wasn't A New Hope. It was just Star Wars with the original crawl. That simply doesn't exist. Why? Because someone wanted to go and fiddle with both their effects, and also, again, the whole question about did Han shoot first or second? It's easy. He shot only. Nobody else shot. Han did. But that has been changed, and that changes the basis of a character. To quit the whole argument about this is damaging characters in a way that has no precedence is simply invalid.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Now time for cross-examination from Mr. Doomcock and Ms. Anna. Is that correct?
Yes, that's fine. Doomcock, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I have a question. I have a question for Sam.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sam, for your presentation. Now, you argued that Disney decanonizing the EU is the best way to protect it. And yet that's not what happened. Fact, it has been announced that Heir to the Empire is being remade. They're actually going to go ahead and make a film. They're yanking into the EU, and they're going to go ahead and proceed with it. They are not leaving it alone. They're cherry-picking EU elements to rewrite, to pervert and adulterate. They made a joke out of Black Kur-Santan, as I pointed out, made a joke out of Boba Fett, for that matter, who mostly lives in the EU. There's much more Boba Fett content in the EU than there was in the regular universe. So isn't the notion that decanonizing the EU was the best way to protect it absurd? Because they're slowly and surely rewriting it and degrading it piece by piece. So isn't that assertion patently false, sir?
No, I don't believe so. And I think maybe I was trying to talk fast, so maybe I didn't construe my point 100%. So Disney, obviously, they're going to pick and choose whatever they want. That's not going to change. Would you say, in all the examples that you just gave me, that Disney did a good job adapting the EU? Yes or no? Real quick.
Of course not. No, they did not.
So
and
no.
Yet they are. They are adapting it.
They're adapting it, but they did not do it correctly. They would have done that with every character in the EU. It being decanonized puts up like a shield, right? Like body armor, okay? I don't know if you guys are gun guys or know anything about that. Body armor does not stop all bullets, but it stops what it's created for, what it's set up for. So body armor will protect you from that, okay? The EU being decanonized is a layer of body armor. It's not going to protect everything. Obviously, they're going to reach in there, pull out Darksaber. They're going to reach in there and grab what they want and destroy it. But the main body of the EU is still going to be whole. Okay. And also, the book is always better than the movie. So when they do adapt it and when they do these things, you can be like, well, this kind of sucks. But yeah, go read the book. And not only the book, the whole universe. It's a way in. It guides people in. So that's what I meant by it being decanonized was the best way to protect it. Not obviously, you can't protect it 100%. Disney, they're money grubbing sons of bitches. But you can protect that idea and that core bit the best you can. Because what are the other options besides it decanonizing? Them running with it and destroying everything? Come on, man. Like, let's be real here.
Well, it seems like you're saying that we should be grateful so long as old Buffalo Bill, James Gum, keeps, the lady down in the hole and it rubs the lotion on its skin. It doesn't actually kill the woman. Then it's like, well, at least she's safe in the hole. And I don't know. It seems to this simple country supervillain that's kind of the argument. But so thank you, sir, for your answer.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure, it keeps the lotion on the skin.
Well, we should be grateful that James Gum isn't wearing the skin. Okay, I got you.
I don't have any questions, but I just have a couple points to make, if that's all right.
Please.
So, like last time, so I didn't speak over anyone. I took some notes on all the points that you guys made. And I just want to say, first off, the very first point I need to make is mine and Doomcock's opinion of the EU is not what's on trial. What is canon and what isn't canon is not on trial. That's not what this point is. It's about Disney's treatment of it. Whether or not Doomcock and I like the EU, whether or not you guys like the EU, that doesn't have anything to do with this. That are our feelings on things. That's not on trial. This isn't a fee session. This is going through and, the points that are being made, what Disney did or not. So our opinions on things, yes, we are human, but that's not what's on trial here. So one of the first points that you made, Sam, was fans treat it like it's a child disregard. And so that's basically when I fight with people on Twitter is that they disregard any valid points you make. It's just all on emotion, which is, I think, a majority of my presentation. Maybe I did have some emotion because I was holding items that I personally own, but that wasn't me saying, here's my fees. That was showing actual things that were created that were part of the EU. That's not my feelings on trial. And putting things off as this is just your child And that's just negating every valid point that was made, which I will bring up. You did bring up Marvel and how Marvel isn't able to adapt things correctly. Well, I did make this point in my presentation, which none of you guys addressed, which was that they don't want to pay the creators. That is what's going on in Marvel right now. I don't know if you guys are aware of the lawsuits with characters like Spider-Man and Superman. So the families of the men that created those characters are currently suing Marvel and DC over the rights to those characters, because obviously grandma and grandpa, they didn't know that this character that grandpa was drawing or grandpa was writing was going to become, a worldwide phenomenon that it was. So they just got a paycheck. And so the Ditko family has been fighting for the rights. The creators of Superman have been fighting for the rights. That's why we have characters like Miles Morales that was created. So that way Marvel doesn't have to pay the owners of Spider-Man. And that's the same thing that's going on with some of the EU writers, actually a majority of the EU writers. Just like I brought up with the gentleman that wrote Splinters of the Mind's Eye, he was on a stream on Orville Nation's channel where he went on to great lengths to talking about how him and his wife are elderly, and he relies on the royalty checks from these, books that he wrote that Disney just stopped flat out with, that was part of his contract. And Disney had been paying him, but they just stopped because they don't want to pay the people that created this. That's a big reason why the EU isn't part of it. That's the reason why She-Hulk sucks, is because they don't want to pay John Byrne. They don't want to pay him for, the sensational She-Hulk, because a lot of the people writing She-Hulk, as we all know, they don't want to give credit to a man, which, you don't want to give credit to a man,
aren't they?
Do a character that a man created, right? But so they don't want to pay John Byrne. That's a really, really big thing. And I think that is one of the key arguments that I at least was trying to make. Maybe I didn't articulate it very correctly, but that has to do with what you said, Sam, if you want to address that.
Yeah. So as far as the baby thing goes, that was more so to kind of break down the charges, because when we're talking about this, we obviously get very passionate, and it's easy to get lost in the words. So that was mainly to kind of draw the picture of saying, hey, this charge is that Disney did not hurt the EU, right? Because my whole idea, my presentation was that it being decanonized was the best place for it, like I said, with the body armor. So the baby was not to say, oh, you're all in your feelings. It's not what I meant to mean. It was just to kind of get the idea that, hey, what we're charging it with is Disney did not dissolve the EU. You can still go out, buy the books, and why would we throw this precious baby, right, into a meat grinder? We wouldn't. That's why I did it with the baby. As far as payment goes, I completely agree, right? I think it's horribly wrong. I think most people in Hollywood are scumbags, right? They just don't want to pay them, and that's why they didn't do it. But I don't understand how the whole payment actually applies to the charge, right? Because the whole charge was that it was misused because they decanonized it and took what the Star Wars fans felt was theirs, and they took it away. So I agree with the payment. I think it's horrible. I think it's dog shit. I think people should be paid for their ideas. I don't understand how it connects with the charge, because we could argue that all day and I'd be on your side. Yeah, people need to be paid for what they do, right? That makes sense. But I don't understand how that.
Sir, it's quite possible this asteroid is not entirely stable.
Okay.
Okay.
Miss Girl, you're saying?
Oh no, I was just saying that's the point that I was trying to make. That's why one of the main reasons why they decanonize it, because Disney owns Marvel. So Marvel is right now being sued over Spider-Man. They don't want to be sued over Thrawn, right? They don't want to be sued over Revan. They don't want to be sued over Kreia by not paying people like Timothy Zahn or Chris Avellone. They don't want to do that right now. And Chris Avellone just won a big trial with, he was getting Me Too'd, and he just won that. So they definitely don't want him coming after them for KOTOR 2. And that's one of the reasons why KOTOR, they're remaking the KOTOR video games. That's one of the reasons why they're kind of, pushing it off, because they're right now currently, instead of just doing a remastered edition of KOTOR, they're making changes to it.
Yes. So I'm 100% on that idea, but don't you think that it would be better for the EU to be kind of pushed off to the side and in theory left alone than to have the Marvel lawyers be like, all right, well, this is the canon that we have. How can we change it to screw over more people, right? And then butcher it completely. That's my whole argument here, is that if we're talking about a different company buying it, we can have that argument of, oh, it'd be faithfully adapted and they pay them, but we know Disney is shit. Okay, we got that. So doesn't that make sense that to leave it alone and not do anything with it rather than screw over more people? Because they're not going to pay. you and I, like, we all know that they're just going to screw over people just like they did with Marvel, and look how Marvel's going. Even in the comic books, it sucks. So I just don't know why we're throwing the EU into the meat grinder. Does that make
yes. We seem to be made to suffer. It's our lot in life.
You know, in a rebuttal to Miss Girls, like from the legal point of view, yes, Marvel is currently being sued. They will probably win, just like Schuster. You know, from all the suits over the years with regards to Superman and Batman and the rest, the creators and the artists within the comic community for nearly a century, it's all work for hire. They have no rights or obligations based on the company. Now, from an ethics point of view and a fairness point of view, should they be cutting them in on it or establishing them into the contracts? Absolutely. But from a legal standpoint, the courts continue to hold in that direction as to whether or not there's any obligation to revisit those contracts that were originally signed. It's not like they didn't know what they were going into. The contracts at the time were simply not that complicated. The current times as well, I have not had a chance to review the prior to Disney and post-Disney licensing contracts with regards to the release of rights to characters established within the EU, whether there is actually any rights held by Disney or by third parties. So I would have to defer to other colleagues and opposing counsel. But as far as misuse, one thing I would put back is, what is the judgment of misuse? There's only currently on the Star Wars list of both films and series that exist that are below an audience score of 50%, thus indicating at least half of the audience population enjoyed and got something out of those shows. Their opinions on the EU, notwithstanding, it is not damaging or killing the Star Wars brand.
So the possibility of you successfully winning this case is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Right?
Pish posh with the odds.
Never tell me the odds.
To counteract that, so 60 years ago, they didn't know what they were getting into, right? When they didn't know creating Superman was going to be one of the most iconic characters in the world. Same with Spider-Man. And I believe it was one of the families on Spider-Man that did just win recently. So Marvel isn't, untouchable in that way. So kudos to that family. And then also, I don't go off of online stats because I know how to use a computer. I know how to go and spam things. All of those, like Rotten Tomatoes, we've seen it happen again where they just take things down based on if it's getting a response that they don't like. We saw that happen with Captain Marvel. So when it comes to the online standing of it, I don't really take that into consideration as actual data. If you do, then that's you. But me personally, I don't, and neither does a majority of my audience. When it comes to actual Star Wars, though, I look at characters like Rose Tico. You can't give that action figure away. Nobody wants it. The Rise of Skywalker was the first Star Wars movie that didn't have a toy line. I've been collecting toys since I was a very, very young child, and I had them for almost every movie up until The Last Jedi. I didn't buy a single thing from The Last Jedi. The only time I recently started buying Star Wars again was because of Baby Yoda, and that's it. So with them and what was the point of the online stats?
Yeah.
I think as far as standings, I think we can see it by just going to the stores. There's no Star Wars aisle in a store anymore. Do you guys remember when we would go to stores?
Yeah.
There was an entire Star Wars aisle in every single store. That's gone.
But that was happening between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Between episodes 2 and 3, that decrease had already been occurring. Because we remember what the kind of like the toy line push, they still existed, but they were is not like the linear thing. As soon as Disney hit, it dropped off to zero.
Yeah, I got a different point of view. The reason we don't see these toy aisles anymore, a friend of mine, she bought her son a whole bunch of Lego, and then he got 7 years old with an iPad and went with Minecraft. He doesn't touch any of that Lego. She plays with it now. Like, the reason we grew up from a certain era where toys were a thing, but the fact is most people are buying toys are in their 30s and up. The kids today, they're playing on their iPads. They're not watching these things. I know a lot of parents with that problem, and they're like, why can't I get my kid to love this stuff like I did?
So I'm
I would like to go ahead and interject for a moment. So we are debating what is misuse of the EU. I will tell you what misuse of the EU is. It's bringing in a badass love character like Black Santan and having him go ahead and be so stupid and incompetent as to grab Boba Fett out of a Bacta tank where he's just wearing his Speedo and just go ahead and throw him around and go grr a little bit, where a Wookiee can pull your arms off, and Black Santan can do way worse than that. And in fact, he throws him around a little bit and they grapple and he's slick with Bacta fluid and he crawls over to a weapon. And that's when Black Santan goes ahead and activates like some electronic spiked brass knuckles. Why not lead with that? They're turning these people into clowns. They are rating this. And they are, just because they haven't yet gotten deep into obliterating and perverting and misusing the EU, well, the shape of things to come. The shape of things to come. And Boba Fett has been absolutely decimated by the activities of Disney. And Boba Fett actually mostly lived in the EU. Most of his stories, comics, tales, novels, he hardly is in the original trilogy. He just gets ignominiously killed and thrown into the Sarlacc pit, and they have him crawl out, just like they have, Palpatine. He suddenly
That's from the expanded universe. That's from the expanded universe.
Yes, Black Santan is the expanded universe, and you're ignoring this, sir. I have already proven this. I have proven that Black Santan to the jury, and the jury will decide, but I have more than adequately prepared with this instance. There are many more of the abuse.
Hey, so everyone, order in the court.
Listen to them. Star Wars is dying, Judge Gore. Curse my metal body. I wasn't fast enough.
Thank you, Mr. 3PO. We have gone off the rails. This is not a cross-examination. This is open debate. So I'm going to end the cross-examination. We're going to move to open debate in just a moment. My understanding is Mr. Bill needs to, as a previous appointment.
I do. I'm in court over trying to defend Joss Whedon. So we'll see what happens next.
All right, Mr. Bill, you are excused. Thank you for your attendance here in court today. I'll see you in a few weeks, sir. Thank you very much.
Be in San Diego, everyone. Be best.
All right. Take care, Mr. Bill. We are going to move to open debate in just a moment. I'd like to read some of these comments from the jury. Additionally, I want to remind the jury, over 1,100 people currently watching live. Members of the jury, as Mr. Ng instructed you earlier, to please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. But even more importantly, we're about to put up a poll. A poll. Do you think who made the better argument today? The prosecution or the defense? I'll say this. My understanding is that the defense that has come here and appeared in my courtroom has not scored higher than a 10%. I'm disgusted by hearing this. I think the very least you could do is get north of 10%. I take the proceedings of this fake internet courtroom very seriously, as I think you should as well. Now, before we put up that poll, I'm going to read some comments. We'll move to open debate for about 20 minutes before we read the results of that poll. But I really think focusing on the argument is going to win the day.
Your Honor, I hope the defense gets a 69 at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Ng. That number seems to pop up whenever you're
What
around.
is this number, designation 69?
Something definitely pops up.
I would like the prosecution to get a 420, but perhaps that's not numerically possible.
Yes.
I'm going to read some of the comments. Thank you very much for your remarks, everyone. Some comments here from the jury. Angry Yeti TV for 5. Even the Crystal Star was exponentially better than anything Disney Star Wars. Also push the button. Just Nova 1138 for 499. George made decisions which even made the EU personal. Star Wars is George Lucas. It's personal to him, regardless if people don't like some aspects. And Al Matheson for 10. So Disney would have misused the EU, so we would be happy they decanonized it because Disney willingly butchered their original stories. The defense. Gold star effort, fellas. I think that was a sick burn, as the kids say. Angry Yeti TV for 5. I'm 25 and a half books away from finishing the novels I call BS. The only major canon-breaking events were in the few short stories, some comics, and games. A Mexican Iron Man for 1999. Your Honor, in consideration of the most excellent work of Mr. Doomcock and Ms. Star Wars Girl, if it please the court, then Mexican Iron Bailiff is prepared to take LucasFilm into protective custody and solitary confinement. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Iron Man. Big Jojo for 499. I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, rotating, and it gets everywhere. John Orchard for 10. Wearing body armor that is destroyed still means they are shooting at you. Once the body armor is gone, what do you have left? They keep shooting. Your argument is disingenuous. I think that was directed at you, Sam.
Shots fired.
The Chad for 499. The defense appears to only attack George Lucas, not defend Disney every trial, and we should be grateful? Really? Continue with that. Good call. Mattuine for 10. When the frog asked the scorpion why it stung him, the scorpion said, "It's my nature." Disney gonna Disney. The relative purity of EU characters will inevitably suffer bastardization via attrition. And Just Nova 1138 for 499. George never intended on adapting the EU, but was canon. Certain parts weren't. Disney is misusing by adapting the EU for nostalgia and propaganda. And the Honorable Crunchy Beaver for 20. Faden, Frank escapes being smothered by Hair Emperor Ing's prison with the help of X-Ray and Six. Furious, Ing sends his Bush army to penetrate Frank's hideout where his friends Mexican Iron Man and Culture Casino are. Someone is writing fanfic.
Right.
That's what that looks like. The poll is now live. We're gonna
Sometimes
continue.
I just don't understand human behavior.
We're going to continue. We'll wrap up at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I like to bring up one point of fact for the moment, but the Star Wars EU books are still available from Random House. You can buy them brand new from there. Obviously, that goes against Disney's Hyperion Books, who does the High Republic. So,
Yeah,
but just for point of clarity, that you can still purchase the books, order them from your bookstores. And
Yeah,
so
when I was down at the last time I was down at the local Barnes & Noble, I saw Star Wars Expanded Universe books for sale. So unless they're cleaning out the backlot, I don't know. There's someone's still making these things.
Yeah, they're still available from the publisher. That's the point.
And now we move to open debate. You may debate any topics, any comments made. Mr. 3PO, you're also welcome to chime in. While we're getting set to do that, Mr. Blackwood, let's see what you've been working on. I see a 3PO. I see a 3PO holding a red.
It is I, C-3PO's human cyborg relations. And you are?
Well, that looks like a keg and a red solo cup. Ironically, a solo cup. Well, there you are.
Unfortunately, don't drink that, 3PO. It's not beer.
And I see a...
Oh, I think I'm melting. This is all your fault.
And I see a sketch of Mr. Doomcock holding a very frightened mouse. Disney mouse. Well, there you are.
Nobody worries about upsetting a droid.
Okay. Help me, Alan. You're my only hope.
Oh.
Astro Astrokeg droid, says Jay Prez. Moving on to open debate. Now, open debate, this is your last 20 minutes to dispute any arguments, any debates. Open debate, anyone may speak.
Yeah, let me start by just calling into question the relevancy of Count 8. I would say that the EU is precious to diehard Star Wars fans, but I would say the majority of the fans are casual and know nothing of the books. Do you agree with the idea that there are not enough people to care enough about the EU to make it relevant? And what is it? Yeah, and why should casual fans care about the EU?
Well, every casual fan can be made into a diehard fan. Like I was saying, when I was little, I was buying the action figures and the toys. I am one of those people that is under 30 that was buying the toys. And so how I got into it was stuff like this and seeing really cool characters. I mean, this is from the older Star Wars brand, the one that's up behind me, the one that's with the green label. This is the original Thrawn action figure. So they had a lot of the EU stuff, even in the toys. So that, makes me think George wouldn't have had this being made and out there if he didn't want people interested in the EU. And this was really cool as a child. You get 2 action figures and a book to see who those action figures are, and it unlocks a whole other side of Star Wars. That's like saying, well, what do the books matter for the Halo? Like, so why would you read the books when you can just play the games? But the books add so much more to the games. You see what I say? You want me to elaborate further?
No, I would also add, Anna, that the vast majority of Star Wars material is EU. Comparatively, there are very few movies and television shows and cartoons. The vast bulk of these EU properties are things that sustained the franchise in a period of long drought when there was nothing coming out. So you're basically saying that part of the lower torso and the legs were severed, and we've basically got even less of Star Wars left than was left of Darth Maul, who actually got cut off at the waist. I think there's even less of Star Wars extant after this.
Well, to give another example, there's characters like Bane and Revan, who are 2 extremely popular Star Wars characters. There is no movie of Revan or Bane, right? There's novels and video games. Revan video games, Bane novels, and Revan has
watch a Revan movie on YouTube. Someone's fan edited all the.
You can, and it's great. I would highly recommend it. Same thing with Malgus as well. That's his name, Chris, who is gone now as well. Oh, there's a puppy.
Yeah. Look, I like the EU, but the fact is, it's a giant convoluted mess. And it's hundreds of books, video games, and for every time we have something great, like the Timothy Zahn trilogy, we're going to have something. We have for the KOTOR 2, which you got to play the fan expansion. Play that; it makes the game a whole lot better. But
if you want to go to a robot planet for
or like I said, the Crystal Star, or the New Rebellion, or the fact half those books written about the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, like a lot of it, it's just a lot. And I'm sorry that the creators are getting screwed by Disney, but that's unfortunately the deal George Lucas signed when he gave these people this stuff.
Disintegrated?
Actually, it's not. When Alan was on Orville Nation, he explained his contract, and when Disney bought Lucasfilm from George Lucas, it was still under contract that they still have to pay royalties to everyone. So they are actually breaching the contract of everyone that they saw.
I meant in general when George Lucas gave up control of this thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, also to your point, I mean, our opinion on what is good and what isn't on trial here. So whether or not you like certain aspects of the expanded universe, that doesn't matter. Like for me, for example, I don't like the way that the Thrawn trilogy ended, and that's one of the best in the EU, but I don't like the ending of it. But that's just my opinion. That doesn't change my argument.
George knew better than to trust a strange company.
I would like to just address something here. You know, I mean, we're talking about, well, what is the harm? You know, the EU is still around. You can still like buy things and et cetera and so on. Officially severing the EU, making it a point, making it a proclamation, is something of a symbolic and moral attack against George Lucas's Star Wars. Now, what difference does that make, you may say? I mean, what difference does it make if, say, the general public doesn't know a lot about these things and doesn't care? Well, I would basically say that it is a symbolic disavowing of the fandom that came before. For example, why does anybody care if someone burns an American flag? Well, the American flag is a symbol, but of course, America is not damaged by the burning of an American flag. It doesn't impact our territory. It doesn't impact our laws. It doesn't impact individual citizens, except the ones that perhaps are upset by it. But it is a moral attack against the United States, attacking the symbols of an establishment or a franchise in this case, is an attack on that franchise, and particularly demoralizing to the fans. Disney Star Wars has been one big assault on the fandom, on the very notion of fans that have extended for, since 1977. And one of the key aims of these kind of cultural vandals, of the woke movement, is to devalue, debase, revise, and replace the targeted lore, the targeted culture, in this case, Star Wars. I would say that this is a larger and more pernicious issue at heart, beyond the scope of this trial. But I would say that simply saying, well, is the EU popular? Do most people know about it? Is not really at issue here. It's not certainly a defense to the charge. It is a larger issue of disrespect to the fandom. And as I always say, without respect, we reject.
I have a simple question for both Anna, Doomcock, whoever. What would you guys would have preferred to have happened with the EU?
What I prefer isn't on trial here.
I'm just asking because I'm
an open debate. We actually had an open debate, so
yeah, I am a simple person. Okay, when I see what we're doing here, all right. When I see what we're doing here, we're talking about how Disney killed Star Wars. I'm all good on the charges, right? Like breaking the fourth wall here. Yep, we're cool. I don't like Disney, but we get down to this, and I don't understand why you'd say them leaving the EU alone for a majority of it. I don't understand how that's a problem, because what they did with Luke Skywalker was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. We know that Disney cannot keep their crap together to make a good story to save their life. So why is it a bad thing that they left some of our favorite characters alone? Anna, you had that figure that was of the Solo.
They're not. They're not leaving them alone. They just haven't gotten to them yet.
Hey, Anna, who was that person that you just lifted up, that little action figure? Who was it?
Which one?
The little action figure, the daughter of the Solos.
Jaina?
I don't think he likes you.
What'd they do to that? They left her alone.
No. They didn't leave her alone. They completely erased her and they replaced her with Kylo Ren.
They put her in the off canon. Okay, the off canon. Hey, wasn't
yes,
someone?
They insulted her, and then they claimed
there's
no female characters. There's no strong female characters.
I just want to go on record of saying one thing. I was relieved when Disney took over Star Wars. And I know people find that bad, but the fact is, I went from that generation that went through the prequels. And we all went in there, and you can see the trial, you can watch the movie, you can hear the song that some of the fans made about George Lucas doing something to Star Wars, or to their childhood. I was relieved, and there has been good stuff that's come out of Disney. And I'm happy when they do good stuff, and a lot of times they do bad stuff. But the fact is, like I've been saying, it's not disrespectful to the fans because they're just doing, as previously pointed out, what George Lucas did.
That's not at all what George Lucas did. Kathleen Kennedy said none of this existed. George Lucas, I showed the photo in my presentation. George Lucas used the expanded universe and had it there to
and
reference.
He also wrote that expanded universe when it suited
He
him.
what?
He overrode it.
Well, George Lucas created Star Wars. He's allowed to change things.
And now Disney owns Star Wars, and they're allowed to
Disney didn't create Star Wars. They're changing someone else's creation.
That's what happens every time you make a work.
And that's why we're in this trial.
And you think that's a good thing, that they can go ahead, the highest bidder can go ahead and buy whatever they want
capitalism.
and trash it and destroy it.
You watch your language.
That's how capitalism
We're
works.
allowed to
You'll be
call
malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile. And don't let me catch you following me, begging for help, because you won't get it.
Laura,
So one of the points I wanted to make that I had written down for you, Sam, was the claim is not about the ability, Disney's ability to adapt things correctly. It's about whether or not and how they treated the EU, and they disrespected it. Kathleen Kennedy saying it didn't exist. We're not arguing on if they would have done a good job with it. That is not what was on trial.
Okay, what you're saying right now is, hey, go ahead and go 55 miles an hour in a school
That's
zone.
not what I said. Don't put words in my mouth.
Is it legal?
That is not what I said. Don't
You
put
got
words.
it backwards, you filthy furball. Only an overgrown mophead like you would be stupid enough.
I do not understand how you can look at this and say, yes, Disney messed up the EU because they left it out. Okay, they cherry
I
picked.
didn't say that.
Talk about that, but that is the count. That is the count. I read the count. I stated the count. They disrespected the fans by decanonizing it. By decanonizing it, they took it out. They were not going to adapt it. So how?
But they are adapting it.
Don't you call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease?
I might actually blow up C-3PO.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No offense. No,
Does anyone have any
Kathleen Kennedy using as an excuse as to why we have Star Wars fatigue by saying that they don't have any source material like Marvel, that is a huge disrespect. And then not paying the people that created it. Bastardizing Luke Skywalker, that was an FU. Everything that Disney has done since they got Star Wars is a fuck you, and a hard fuck you with sandpaper and everything. So
Agreed.
with the EU, I'm not arguing on if they would have done a good job. That is not what the argument was. The argument on how they're disrespecting it, and I have given point after point on how they've disrespected it. It's not my opinion.
Oh dear,
that is
Anna,
the argument.
if I told you half the things I've
That
heard
is-
about this
that is
Kathleen Kennedy,
100% the
you'd probably
argument.
short circuit.
I disagree. There are parts of the new Star Wars that I really like, and they are not.
I like that they end.
What's that?
I like that they end, that they're finite in time and there are end credits, and then I feel an overwhelming sense of relief. That's the only thing I like about Disney Star Wars.
Guys, our feelings aren't on trial.
Well,
No.
yes, they are. That is the point.
No, they're not.
Charge is that we, the fans, are disrespected, and some of us aren't. Right? This entire debate is an emotional thing. This is a bunch of mostly Star Wars nerds arguing over whether or not we feel disrespected by Disney, and some of us aren't. And I'm
Well, I'm glad you embrace Disney Star Wars, sir. That's a wonderful thing. I certainly can't. I know the difference between shit and Shinola, and I do not embrace it. I renounce it. I renounce the devil and all of his works.
I know people cried at
Like
the end
Michael
of Pinocchio.
Corleone.
There's no judging people or telling what people do.
Oh, I judge the hell out of people. That's a damn lie. I do not understand how we can go from the count is Disney disrespected Star Wars fans by decanonizing it, and then saying that if they did decide to canonize it, that them butchering it has nothing to do with it.
No, the argument is not.
at all.
Let me rephrase it. We're not debating on our opinion on how Disney's ability to adapt the EU would have gone. That's not what is the charge. Okay, so maybe I misspoke.
Disrespect.
It's disrespect. It's not what we thought their ability would have been. That's hearsay.
Okay, I'm arguing that this is the most respectful choice in hindsight. Disney is a freaking murderer. They murdered Star Wars. Why do we want them to murder more? I physically cannot understand
Never said
that.
I wanted them to murder more. Neither did
That is what the charge is. That is what the charge is. Because
no, the
opposite of
charges
charge
are us
is
trying to
saying that
prove
they wanted
that
to
they
keep it canon.
disrespected the EU and offended the fan base, right? Can we bring
By
the
keeping it
charges up
canon.
again and we can go at sentence by sentence?
It's blatant abuse, and abuse has been proven. Black Kursantan alone is proof. Boba Fett is proof. I mean, I absolutely have great sympathy for the defense, I would certainly not have assumed that role. And I applaud you gentlemen for having an essentially impossible task, in my view. We'll see how the jury reacts, but I would never defend anything that Disney has done with Star Wars. So, but I'm not hearing any proof that contradicts the resolution, the blatant misuse of the EU. Obviously, the EU has been misused, and I would offer executed, in my opinion.
I would say that it's not misused because this is the best outcome for it. That's why I'm so disconnected here, because this is the best outcome. Because if you look at any other outcome with Disney getting their grubby little fingers on it, they would have mutilated it.
They are mutilating it, according to
by your logic, sir. You're saying that if Billy the Kid shoots a guy in the kneecap and leaves him in the dust, that's a lucky day for him, because Billy the Kid could have put one in the head. And I would say that both are crimes, sir. Both are crimes.
Oh, so you think leaving someone with a busted up knee is just as bad as killing someone?
I would say they're both crimes.
They're both
severity,
crimes.
but they are both crimes. Therefore, you're just acknowledging that analogy. You're acknowledging that indeed Disney has abused the EU. They haven't abused it as badly, sir. So you lose, sir. Good day to you.
Let me interject, and I think I can find common ground here. So when you brought up Marvel and the shows and how they're not even respecting it, and I explained it's because they don't want to pay the creators, like She-Hulk, they didn't want to pay John Byrne for Sensational She-Hulk. Now, if they would have just said, screw it, this guy wrote something great, let's adapt it, and let's make She-Hulk based on the actual She-Hulk comics, they're going to be very silly, and it might be a little weird to see them on the big screen, or in our case, our living room screen, but it would have had a better basis, right? They would have maybe changed it because of, we all know who was doing She-Hulk. But with Star Wars, as compared to having just random characters that they pull out of their ass like Rose Tico, there would have at least been someone that at least had a decent backstory that we could have read up on. Now, this is me doing all hypotheticals. I'm not defending Disney, and I'm not, it's just, we don't know, so that's why we're not arguing. I get what you're saying, where you just like that they were left alone. And I like that a lot of it they don't know about, but it's only a matter of time before they do. Like when they butchered Talon Card and they put a knockoff character of him in the Andor show. And then when you go to his, what is it, Lucan, is that his name? And then you're in his shop and he has like Star Killers stuff in there. And it's like, oh, so now you guys care? And they're butchering it because it doesn't make sense that things from other eras would be there. I think they even had something from Revan in his shop. It doesn't make sense, and they've already started to butcher it. So we'll maybe in a year or two, we can have this debate again on how they've adapted it, because they're starting to find out, because they are actually that desperate now.
And we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna go to some chat comments from our jury, and then we're going to read the results of the poll. So let me begin with that. Eric Henson, Threat Level 2, has been a member for 5 months and says court should be comparing things like Book Thrawn to Rebels Thrawn, similar to when Doomcock mentioned Boba Fett. Misuse implies comparison, right? Patrick T for 199. I'm sure that Sam impregnated Goofy. Not understanding what that means.
Who would deny that?
Slade Lawton just became a YouTube member. Thank you for that. You may continue. If you become a member of the channel, you'll get access to the Film Threat Discord. There is a Critics Court forum on the Discord. You can continue this conversation there. Just Nova 1138 for 199. The EU was meant to make the saga more lived in. AJ Matheson for 5. Sam, they won't leave the EU alone and untouched. They will pick the best parts and mash them into Disney canon. We'll see that in Ahsoka. And Radioactive for 10. Disney may be allowed to rewrite Star Wars since they own it now. However, the fans/customer base does not have to accept it, buy it, or even acknowledge it. Gear Stark for 1999. Shadows of the Empire was a multimedia project that included a book, comic, games, and even a soundtrack without a movie. All of this was done by Lucasfilm for the EU. As for Barnes & Noble, there are fewer EU books than Disney on the shelf. Angry Yeti TV for 5. Lucas created something out of nothing. Disney is creating nothing out of something. They are so stupid they decanonized what was never canon. Just Nova 1138 for 499. It's not just about disrespect of fans, it's disrespect of George and his creations and his entire legacy. Disney needs to stop kicking the horse. And wait, let's go to this last one. The defense is a joke. They are safe decanonized. They're literally grabbing from it and bastardizing it, says Grimnack for 5. And the results of our poll today, who do you think made the best argument? Prosecution, 91% of the vote. Defense, 8%. Poll complete at 639 votes, which is more than half of the people watching. Well, there you are. That's the results. Want to thank Ms. P. Coffee today, our producer Glenn Brown, Lord Thoth, Latino Slant, Mexican Iron Man, other of our mods in the chat. I also want to thank members of the prosecution today, Mr. Doomcock, Ms. That Star Wars Girl, Anna, Alaning, my colleague, the Spy Guy, Bill Waters, Sam on the defense team, Mr. Blackwood PDX, excellent work today on your sketches, Mr. Blackwood, great job. There we are. That's excellent. And I also want to thank Mr. C3PO today.
Oh my goodness! Oh, my parts are showing.
Is that allowed on YouTube?
It is now. It's a naked robot. But that's it for us today on Critics Court, Star Wars on Trial. A reminder, next week, July 5th, because of the 4th of July holiday, Critics Court is in recess. We will return for count number 9, the final argument in this trial with Nerdrotic, Gary Beekler, as from Heel versus Babyface, and Andrew from Legal Mindset, an actual attorney, will be here. Members of the defense are to be determined. I really just want to thank everyone here. Very passionate arguments. Mr. Doomcock, Mr. Star Wars Girl, Miss Star Wars Girl, Mr. Ing, and members of the defense. A valiant effort, Spy Guy, Sam, and thank you, Mr.
I still have no idea who's going to win this trial in the end. So, great job, everybody.
It is a mystery. But if you'd like to stay on, members, stay on after I end the stream. But I also want to thank members of the jury. You have been listening to these proceedings over weeks. We are very close to the end of this trial. And I appreciate that you're taking this as seriously as all of us. We will see you back when court is in session on Wednesday, July 12th. You are relieved of duty, and may the force be with you.